Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in beautiful Fresno, California, which is the heart of the Central Valley, which is the heart of California. Welcome to the show. It is a great day. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you're here also. And if you're watching us live, feel free to go to our Facebook page, New Thought Talk with Rev Steve. You can message us, and maybe we can answer your questions during the show, or I'll get back to you afterwards. Anyway, it is a great day, and I am glad to be here. I'm going to talk today about depending on principle. So I want to start with defining a few terms to begin with, and then we're just going to kind of move from there. So going to the science of mind, back in the glossary, first I want to read how Dr. Holmes has defined what we call the presence. And he says the presence is God. So when we talk about the presence, we're talking about spirit, God, first cause, however you want to understand that. He says, to meditate upon the presence of God is to indraw the universe into one's own soul. God is not a person, but a principle, personified in each of us. Spirituality is the atmosphere of this principle. Religion is its outward form. And so I want to move right from there to principle. And here he says principle. He says the science of mind is the study of the principle of being. The principle of being is the divine principle, that which we call God. The source or the cause from which a thing results. A truth which is unchangeable. We first understand a principle and then relate it to our problem for a final test. And when he's talking about our problem, he's talking about situations in our life that life brings to us. We were created in the likeness and the image of the divine principle, And obviously we're not talking about a physical likeness and image, but we're talking about a spiritual likeness and image. And because God is spirit and we worship God in spirit, we realize and recognize that as spiritual beings, which we are, expressing in this physical thing that we call our life, that really there is a oneness of allness, and we're all part of that divine principle. That we are, in essence, God expressing as us by expressing through us. And so today, as we talk about this concept of principle and depending on principle, let's first take a look at something that Ernest Holmes wrote about a long time ago in a book that's entitled The Philosophy of Jesus, and this is towards the end of the book. And he says, "Every man's search is after God, because everyone is searching for something that will make him whole. But everyone does not know or quite realize that he is really searching after God." He says, "We have separated religion from everyday life. We have tried to separate life from living and God from nature. God means that invisible principle in which and in the universe." Okay? We have, and I say we, I'm talking about humanity as a whole, we have over a period of time kind of moved away from a spiritual, conceptual, experiential life. We get caught up in the world more now today. You know, there was a time when, and you can read the studies, there's a lot of them out there that say people are moving away from religion, but oftentimes those same studies will also say that people are moving towards some kind of a spiritual understanding of life. And it's an amazing thing when we begin to take and make that first movement, as we decide that maybe spirituality is something that is more than just a word. Maybe spirituality has something to do with me and my life experience. Maybe that there's more to the universe than just what life tells me there is. So we begin to move forward with this, right? We decide that, you know, maybe we want to visit some spiritual centers, pick up some books, do some reading, go online, whatever it is that we're going to do. I want to pause for a minute and reflect back on something that Dr. Ernest Holmes taught, and that was that basically within each and every one of us, there is that which seeks to express itself. As I said in the opening, we are spiritual beings, that we are God expressing as us by expressing through us. And so in this understanding, when we, let's see, make sure I get the right, you know, I've got so much stuff to cover today. Wrong one. Okay. I want to go back here. And again, this is from The Philosophy of Jesus, but it's easier for me to read. You know, one of those things, right? So, every man's search is after God because everyone is searching for something that will make him whole. And that's him or her. You know, Ernest Holmes wrote at a time when, you know, the male pronoun was used, but he's talking about all of us. All of humanity. He says, everyone does not know or quite realize that he or she is searching after God. We are searching for something. We have this desire to find something more than, but we're not sure exactly what that is. And so we begin to make our move. This idea of presence, this idea of an infiniteness that we call God or Spirit or First Cause, being everywhere present. And that means that there's no place, no time, no space where God is not there, Spirit is not there. And you know, if you particularly have an issue because of your past life experience with the word God, then supplant it with something else. You know, Spirit, First Cause, Goddess. It doesn't make any difference what you call it. It's how you personally relate to the divine principle. And it's important that we start at that point, that we understand that we are personally relating to the divine principle, because the uniqueness of this whole concept is no one can do it for us. It's not something that comes from the outside. It's something that we find within ourselves. And once we begin to find it within ourselves, then we can begin to create a relationship with the divine principle. And as we do that, we see it unfold in our lives. Many wonderful things happen. But if you don't start at that point, you may not get to the point of really being able to embody it. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. This idea of the divine principle and then the idea of depending upon it. So let's see here. As we move through here, and I'm almost there. Okay, now, this is in The Science of Mind. We commonly call it the textbook, written by Ernest Holmes. And I'm reading from page 221, and he says, depend on principle. And he's talking, as he's writing in this particular part of the book, about utilizing principle as what we call a practitioner. And a practitioner is any individual that utilizes affirmative prayer treatment. We've talked about that in the past. And although there are licensed and certified practitioners, today I'm talking about you and me, just the individual, as a practitioner in our own life. Because when we begin to start and go forth on our journey, we become practitioners. So he says here, principle is the power that made everything. It is absolute. It will not and cannot be denied. The only thing that can deny God is yourself. So what does he mean when he says it will not and cannot be denied? And yet he also says the only thing that can deny God is yourself. You know, what does that mean in our life? Well, as we move forward and we come to an understanding that there's this infiniteness that we call principle or God, that is everywhere present, that it is the creative force, the first cause of everything and all that is, and that we are connected with it at a level that is so intimate that it is our very beingness, and that because we were gifted with consciousness and the ability to make choices, that in our interaction with this principle, we're always utilizing it. Maybe not consciously so, but in fact, we're always utilizing it. And the thing is, and this is where, you know, there's kind of the bug in the ointment, if you will, the thing is that it is always responding to us. So if we happen to, and we've talked about this in the past, if we happen to hold a trend of thought that is somewhat limiting in its tone or tenor, or somewhat negative in its, in its trend as it goes through our mind, that's how the principle responds to us, in limitation, in negativity. And so we see life expressed for us, and I say expressed for us because it is expressed for us in a theme, if you will, that parallels the trend of thinking that we have in mind. Now, having said that, we understand that life comes at us at the speed of life, so there's sometimes there's some challenges. But we were also gifted at the time of our conception with with everything available in potential that we would need to transcend those challenges. And think about this. Whatever you've experienced in your life, no matter how you have defined it as less than this, or traumatic, or terrible, or whatever, here, now, today, in this moment, you are here, and it's not. It's in the past. It's gone. And yet, oftentimes, and this is something we've talked about in the past, that we tie our story to what happened in the past. But the past isn't here. The past is gone. It's history. It's like a book in a library, and we don't have to pull that book out and read it every day to define our day by the story that's in our book. But what we can do every day is we can begin to start our day by depending on principle. And that means as we go forth into the day, we go forth with an understanding that this divine principle, this thing that we call God, is there, and that there is a law that is a part of God that responds to us. And so when we start our day, and I've said this on the show many times, when you start your day, before you even crack your eyes in the morning, make a claim on that day that it is a great day, that it is a gift from the divine, that it is here for you to express the greater good that you are in this world. Regardless of what you're going to come across during that day, there may be challenges, but like I say, we are able and capable of meeting and surpassing any challenge that comes our way because we have a bigger God. We have a bigger principle. But we have to depend on that in order to see with optimism, with harmony, with peace, and with love, and with an expectation of goodness that day as it unfolds. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about this being dependent on principle and Stick around, and I'll see you when we come back from our first break. Contact David Sprinkle at Century 21 Denton Realty to buy this beautiful home in Yosemite Lakes Park. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and over 2,900 square feet. Dave can help you with your real estate needs in Fresno, Madera, and Mariposa counties and surrounding areas. When you need a realtor, call Dave Sprinkle at 559-285-9785.
Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at condiopress.com and as ebooks at amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at godsinspirationsblog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today. Protect yourself by letting private investigator Michael Morgan Clark get the facts you need in matters of infidelity and divorce, corporate investigations, criminal defense, workers' comp, child parental abduction, wrongfully accused. Michael Morgan Clark will investigate anyone. Call 559-785-1900 or visit clarkinvestigations.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Certifying foster homes for placement of children suffering from abuse.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. During the break, my producer Mike told me that we had a comment from Catherine Redmond. Catherine, thank you for commenting on the show. Appreciate you watching and sharing it. But moving forward, I'm going to kind of split between two things. The first thing I want to talk about is this concept of depending on principle. And Holmes goes on to say, he says, do not think of disease as an entity, but as an impersonal thought force. In healing, you are separating the false from the, you are separating the false from the true. The work is definite and dynamic and is consciously done, always with a clear purpose in mind. A clear purpose in mind, done in mind, in thought, and that's where we make that connection with Source, with God, with Spirit. So I'm going to transfer from that to, and this is also in the Science of Mind, or from Living the Science of Mind. It can be found on page 111, where under the discovery of God as personal, Holmes writes. He says, "No one can find God for us. Each individual must do this for him or herself. We cannot find God outside of the self because we cannot go outside of the self. There's no place where we begin and God leaves off. We can find God only within ourselves." And that's what I was saying earlier. If God is everywhere present, there's no, we often think of ourselves as ending at our skin, and that's just not the case. We are part of a greater unity of wholeness, of oneness. And so, there's a shift in consciousness that we make as we begin to move forward with this. But as we make this shift in consciousness, we look out into the world, and all of a sudden the world is no longer a hostile, limiting, negative place, but it is a place of opportunity. It's a place of goodness and godness. And yes, there are things in life, and I say this each time as we talk about things like this, where there are negative issues that are being expressed by individuals that believe themselves to be separate from or not part of the greater whole, but they're still God as expressing in that individual. So we hold the individual in a consciousness of love, but we put up boundaries, to keep the behaviors at bay. That's perfectly right. It's perfectly good, and we move forward. And the exciting thing about this is we do this for ourselves as we continue to move forward. What we're doing is we're creating almost, if you will, like an energy force that has a greater effect on the world. Coming up in the next segment, I'm going to pull up something on my cell phones, knowing more than I know at any given time. Go figure. But anyway, I found an article, and I put it on my cell phone. It talks about, it's an article from Quantum Neurology or something like that. It's a peer-reviewed journal, and we talk about mind, and I'm just going to leave it that kind of as a teaser because there's some interesting stuff that's relatively new and cutting edge. But moving forward, he says what we need then is to learn that the law governing this principle, we need to learn the law that governs this principle. Well, what is this law? There's no great mystery. We often refer to the law in many different ways, but in truth it's the law of cause and effect, and the first cause is the creative force. But oftentimes we look at conditions and we think that the conditions are the creative force behind something that we experience. Conditions are a result of something that existed before the condition. When we begin to shift how we look at conditions, we begin to realize that there's a first cause behind all conditions, and we begin to look at the idea that we are with and as and expressing God as ourselves, then we have a connectedness to the first cause, the cause that causes the conditions, and we can begin to empower ourselves in how we relate and interact with those conditions. And as we do so, we change our life experience. It's not, it's when things happen, it's not the experience that determines our experience, not the event itself. It's our beliefs as we go into that experience that determines our reality. And when we begin to seek to see the good in all things, as Christian Larson taught in his books about in everything, search for the good. You make that a mindset. You begin to look at, you find the good in everything. Doesn't mean we're not going to have challenges. We are, but we're going to transcend those challenges in a positive way, and we're going to come out the other side being more empowered, more spiritual, our faith is greater, and we move forward into our life a stronger, better, more positive, harmonious, and loving person. But we have to do that, and no one can do it for us. It's amazing. When I first came to this concept of religious science, and I talked to some people about it, and oftentimes I got, well, come on, really? When Ernest Holmes was teaching in the early part of the 20th century, he had a belief and a concept that New Thought, in particular what he called science of mind and spirit or religious science, was going to have an immense effect on the world. He truly believed that there was a mindset shift that was going to take place as a result of New Thought teaching that was going to change the world, its outlook, and people's life experience. And he made his transition in 1960, and history has given us a lot of stuff since 1960, but one of the things that it hasn't given us is that evolution that he was talking about in human spirituality. And yet, today, I believe that the time is right and ripe for what Dr. Holmes was talking about. I think we being humanity as a whole, may have gotten a little distracted with all the stuff that's going on in the outward world, and we look at that and we think that that is truly life, and we see ourselves as separate from life, and we struggle with our life experience, and we create a consciousness of self-suffering, and we become victims of life. And then someone comes along and says, we don't have to do that. It's like Dr. Holmes had the diamond in his hand, and somehow it got buried in all the chaos. But it's time today for us to rediscover that diamond, to pull it out, polish it off. That diamond is individual to each and every one of us, but it's a diamond that is a jewel so precious that there's no money on the face of the earth, no matter how much, that can ever purchase it, buy it, or take it from us when we begin to see that as part of our individualized life experience, that we are that person, that the great teacher that Ernest Holmes called the master teacher, Jesus the Christ, so many years ago as he walked and he taught, that Holmes told us that at some point in time, humanity can rise to the level that Jesus was at when we begin to believe and understand that we can rise to the level that Jesus was at. But it's done unto us as we believe. The two great commandments, I think I talked about this last week, that we love our neighbors, we love ourselves. How often we get caught up in the world and we forget that. But that's where we start. As we see God as an everywhere present beingness, presence, principle, we cannot divorce ourselves from any part of that and call ourselves a part of the greater whole, because there is no place separate from God. So these people that we see, and these people, you know what I'm talking about. We all have these people in our life, right? Let's shift our consciousness and open ourselves up to acceptance and love. And let's allow them to be and do and believe whatever it is that they are and whatever they believe. We can love and accept them as being an expression of God. We just don't have to buy into their stuff. But we create a greater stuff within ourselves because we find the divine principle within ourselves. We take time each day We stop, we pause, we clear our minds. We do our prayer work, maybe a little meditation. Maybe we're working on affirmations. We work on changing our beliefs that we know and beliefs that we hold that we don't know. Well, what are beliefs that we hold that we don't know? Well, those are the things, Jung called them, the things that existed in the shadow. Holmes said it was race consciousness or in the subjective mind, but they're beliefs that we hold that limit us. And oftentimes we don't realize that we hold them, but yet they're still having a great significance expressing in our life, because our life is expressed basically as we believe. It's done unto us as we believe. So we begin to figure out how it is that, what are these beliefs, or how it is that they're manifesting. And we've talked about this in the past, taking time and seeing what it is that life mirrors back to us. When we are experiencing limitation in our life, then we hold a belief in limitation. And that's why when Holmes says, what we need then is to learn the law governing this principle. When you give a treatment, when you stop and you give a treatment, which is an affirmative prayer. An affirmative prayer it's not a prayer of supplication. It's not asking something out there to do something for you if it happens to be interested in you. It's about declaring the good that is here and potential for you right now, because you are a child of the principle. You are a child of the divine. You are God expressed as you, and as such, the infiniteness of the divine is available to you. And as you begin to realize this, as you begin to affirm your good, you affirm that you are a good person. You affirm that life is good. You affirm that you are love expressing as you. You affirm in your life that there is no such thing as limitation. Maybe you're seeing it right now. It happens. What we begin to do is make an affirmation that life is greater, more abundant than what we're experiencing. And not to, it's not like we're saying, well, we're going to go out and win the lottery. That's not what I'm talking about. If we're struggling, let's start right where we're at, and let's imagine in our mind, create a mental equivalent of a life that is just a little bit greater than where I'm at today. And we begin to look in our life to see that demonstrate. And as we begin to see that demonstrate, then we can start at that point and we can declare life being a little more abundant. And as we do, we reaffirm within ourselves that it is the divine principle that is expressing through us, that this law of cause and effect is expressing. We become, as we speak our word into the divine, we become a co-creator in that cause, and we see a greater demonstration of that effect in our life. And I get excited when I talk about it. I'm sorry, but when you see this unfold in people's lives, when people that they realize that they are not limited by what they thought they were, no matter what your struggle is, that you have a greater God, that when you avail yourself and you embody that within your consciousness, your beingness, your belief, your understanding, and your faith, you begin to see it demonstrating in your life. And it's a journey for some of us. Some of us are so stuck in our stuff that to try and move forward can be very, very daunting sometimes. And that's not to affirm that it's daunting. It's just, we got to recognize where we're at. But once we recognize it, then we can begin to seek to see a greater openness, a greater pathway, easier, smoother, more, with life just giving us a bigger push, and we can do that. He says, remember that you need assume no personal responsibility for the recovery, he says, of your patient. Here I'm talking about yourself. You do not need to assume responsibility. What we're doing is we do have a definite obligation, which is to give the treatment, to know the truth. And when we know the truth, it's the truth that sets us free. And what is that truth? That we are whole, perfect, and complete, that there is one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. There's one life that is God. There's one being that is the being of God. There is one perfect man, and we are in that image, perfection, on a spiritual level. And when we begin to open ourselves up to a realization that spiritually we are the likeness and the image of perfection, that we are expressing life maybe with some limitations that don't have to be there, that maybe there's some thoughts that we have held, or maybe thoughts that raise consciousness, maybe we've just accepted that these things happen and therefore they're going to happen to me, but we don't have to accept them. And that's what Holmes was talking about. When we open ourselves up, when we seek to find the divine within ourselves, when we seek to embody that divine in our external day-to-day life experience, when we claim our good each and every day, we begin to see a shift. And that shift is awesome. We're going to take our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Certifying foster homes for placement of children suffering from abuse, neglect, and abandonment. To help, contact Lisa Caceres with Angels of Grace at 559-268-0000.
Support Angels of Grace. Attend the Luau of Love Saturday, September 22nd at Arte Americas. For more information and tickets, go to angelsofgrace.com.
Looking for work? Tired of minimum wage? For as low as $200, become certified as a forklift driver at the Certified Forklift Training Center. Call 559-325-8097 or visit cftc.net.
Do you or a loved one have memory problems or mild Alzheimer's disease? Then you may be interested in the Daybreak ALZ Clinical Research Study. The Daybreak ALZ study is a clinical research study for people with memory problems or mild Alzheimer's disease. The study will examine an oral investigational drug that may have some effect on the brain changes associated with Alzheimer's disease. The study is designed to find out whether this investigational drug or study drug can slow down the decline in memory and mental functioning. If you're interested in participating in the study, contact Neuropain Medical Center at research@neuropain.com or call 559-437-9700. Extension 310.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Moving forward, I want to read this. This can be found in The Science of Mind on page 146 under the title of The Power Within. Dr. Holmes says, just so far as we depend on any condition, past, present, or future, we are creating chaos because we are then dealing with conditions, effects, and not with causes. That's what I was talking about in the last segment. Could we but comprehend the fact that there is a power that makes things directly out of itself by simply becoming the thing it makes? Could we but grasp this greatest truth about life and then realize that we are dealing with a principle, scientifically correct and eternally present, we could accomplish whatever it is possible for us to conceive. Life externalizes at the level of our thought. Think about that for a minute. Life externalizes at the level of our thought. And the secret to this is life has always externalized at the level of our thought. But we don't realize that, most of us, particularly, as we get caught up in the outside day-to-day world with, family responsibility, the news, and, it goes on and on and on. And yet, life externalizes at the level of our thought. It doesn't mean that, like I said, it doesn't mean that things are always going to be smooth, but it means that our experience is always going to be at the level that we accept our experience. What do you want to experience? And I'm not talking about necessarily individual things, but we could also talk about that because Holmes says we could accomplish whatever it is possible for us to conceive. What do we want to experience? What can we conceive? What can we conceive and believe? What can we conceive and believe as already becoming a reality? What can we create within our minds as a mental equivalent, something that life itself would correspond to, and have an expectation of seeing it expressed in our life as we have aligned ourselves with that divine principle? It goes back to the law of cause and effect requires, well, it doesn't require, it just is. And as we align ourselves with that law of cause and effect in all ways, we can conceive of a greater good, we can experience a greater good, and we can achieve a greater good in our life. I want to thank Gordon for the thumbs up. I just got word that he did that, so Gordon, thank you. We're moving forward. Where are you at in your life today? Where do you want to be in your life today? Not tomorrow, not yesterday. Where do you want to be today? where you want to be today, if it's not where you are today, then let's question the want. You know, we often have a lot of wants in our life. You know, want this, want this, want this. But oftentimes those are thoughts that are merely wishes. They're not truly wants. They're just things that we hold in our conscious mind. When we really want something, when we are motivated because we want something, if we really get it in mind, for those people, it seemingly is, it's an amazing process. It's almost as if nothing is going to come between them and what they want. And I'm not talking about someone that is obsessively driven. I'm talking about someone that has created a desire so intense within their consciousness that they can actually experience the reality of it already being so. And when they do that, when they get to that level, life unfolds. Things demonstrate, things manifest. I've seen this happen in the lives of others. I've seen it happen in the lives of myself. But life unfolds for us, externalizes at the level of our thought. So it starts with our thought. What's our thought when it comes to divine principle? What's our thoughts when it comes to our dependence upon divine principle? What's our thought as we go through our day? What's our thought when we start our day? You know, it's simple, and I've said it many times. I'm going to say it again. When we start our day, do you claim ownership of the day as a great day before you even open your eyes? It's a simple little thing. Oftentimes when I'm working with people that are seeking to change their life experience, you know, that's where we start. We don't try to take a complete life shift all in one moment, one session, so to speak, but we start with developing a habit of starting your day by claiming the good, the greatness, and the godness that's going to unfold for you in your day. And then you cap that at the evening of the day. What is it that happened today that you genuinely can express and experience gratitude for? Well, the fact that you got through the day would be a place to start. For people that say, well, nothing happened in my day that I'm grateful for. It was a tough day. You got through the day. Start there. You've got tomorrow. You can begin to find things through the day. Maybe it's things you can be grateful for, the fact that things didn't fall apart quite at the level that you thought they would. So maybe tomorrow things are going to go even better. Or maybe you can list things. But it's the habit, the gratitude habit at the end of the day. You know, people that did things for you that maybe you took time to thank them, maybe you didn't take time to thank them, but pause at this point in time at the evening of your day and give thanks for what happened. You begin to shift your consciousness. All of a sudden, you know, not only do you start the day with an expectation of a great day, but you see your experience in the day as an experience that is based in gratitude. Two powerful tools that align ourselves with the divine principle. As we do this, we're creating that dependence, if you will, on principle, but it's a dependence that is part of our beingness. And when we shift out of the intellectualism of what it is, and we begin to shift into the beingness of what it is, then we begin to see the truth really unfold in our life. You know, we can talk about as an individual, as an expression of the divine, but when we begin to experience the beingness as an expression of the divine, all of a sudden we shift. We have that jewel that Ernest Holmes talked about. It's available to each and every one of us. We have that within our own capacity, and it's a jewel that no one can give to us. But it's a jewel as we begin to claim for ourselves, we do begin to change the world. Not just our little world, but we change the bigger world. The world can use that right now. I don't know about you, but the last time I looked at the news, there's kind of a lot of chaos going on. And it's not about somebody out there telling the world how it has to be. It's about somebody here, doing what's necessary to be the catalyst, if you will, to create a better world. You know, catalyst is an interesting thing. I remember back in my chemistry days, you could take one chemical and you could take another chemical and you could have a lot of it and you could mix it together and nothing happens. It's just, it's kind of like oil and water. You shake it up, but it separates, right? But a catalyst was one of these things that the tiniest little bit causes massive change in these chemicals. And that's kind of the way it is in life, that as we begin to make the change within ourselves, one small individual out of the greater billions of people in the world, so you don't think much of it, right? Wrong. Life, there is one life. God is one. There's a unity, a oneness. When we begin to make changes within ourselves, when we take the time and focus on the divine principle within ourselves, when we seek to depend on it to demonstrate good in our life, whether we realize it or not, we are effectively creating change in the world. One of the things that Dr. Holmes did believe in this, what I'm talking about, is this idea that when we get a large enough portion of the population of the world in alignment with a consciousness of a belief in divine principle, a oneness, a unity of all the family of humanity, that we are one, that we're all sisters, brothers, one. There's no separation. There's nothing that makes us different, because we are all God expressing as us, that when we get to that level, that there would be an instantaneous change throughout the consciousness of the rest of the world. And if you're familiar with Ken Kai's book, or The Theory of the 100th Monkey, or if you're familiar with what they call the Maharishi effect, based on some research that the Maharishi University did years ago on how when a small group of people create a shift in consciousness, how it affects a greater geographic region. This is what he's talking about. It's if you happen to be familiar with Rupert Sheldrake, I think his book is titled The Science of Life, and he calls it the morphogenic field. And there's other people that name it different things, but they all come to one basic understanding that you and me, us as individuals, have a power within us to affect the presence of the divine within ourselves that has an outward effect on the world. So you think, well, that's fine, but really what I'm looking, Rev Steve, is to just create a better, more abundant, more positive life for myself. Let me ask you this. If, supposing, you are a creation of God, Spirit, first cause, whatever you want to call it, that you are God expressing as you, is there any place that you can go in the furthest reaches of your imagination where you think that God created me to be limited, or to suffer, or to express and experience less than this? Or is this divine infinite principle that we call God, because it's infinite, and it's infinite in all that it is, and it is the creative force and source behind all that is created, that just maybe I'm here to express life at the level that I can maximally express life? Think about it. If you're here to express life at all, and you're here expressing life, why would you be expressing life at a level less than? Why would you even assume that God, that principle, would choose for you to have less than the allness and the goodness and the abundance that this infinite force can create and will create as we open ourselves up to it? We go back to the idea of the master teacher, Jesus, and the things that he taught and the things that he did and the things that he expressed in his life. There was nothing in there at all that taught us to be less than. There's nothing in there that told us to be separate from. He taught a oneness of humanity. He taught abundance, and he demonstrated those. And what he demonstrated, when we can embody that level of consciousness, the Christ within us, if you will, the life, the God life within us, when we can express a greaterness of it, we can see a greater expression of it in our life. And we were here. Our purpose to be here is to express God, and to express God maximally. And God didn't tie our hands behind our back, didn't handcuff us, Now, having said that, let's be clear. Some of us were born in areas where maybe we're extremely challenged. Some of our early life experiences may be extremely challenging, and that's part of our story. But we don't live our story today. Our story is history. You know, it's history. We can put it in the book. We don't have to be chained to it. As we move and evolve through our spiritual journey, is we come to a realization at some point that whatever the past is, it's past. What's here right now, and what is here right now is life, is God, is principle, and is us. And that has all the ingredients to live life extremely abundantly, expressing love in extreme ways, to experience good in extreme ways. But we have to make the choice. When we begin to make the choice, we begin to seek a truth, we begin to implement a truth in our life, we begin to see that truth unfold in our life, we begin to express that truth. That's, Holmes called that knowing. When you get to that point, knowing and knowing that you know. We're going to take our last break, and I'll see you when we come back. Tell us about this.
Okay, so this listing is over in Woodward Lakes.
Ooh,
it is
nice.
at 10595 North Seacrest in the 93730. It is a quick walk to the clubhouse where you have a junior Olympic-sized pool, clubhouse facilities, gym, and those views you just saw of the lake.
Right.
This home has been completely remodeled downstairs. You see the nice kitchen.
Yeah,
very
nice.
custom kitchen, lifetime warranty on the cabinets, granite, beautiful, gorgeous granite in the kitchen counters. Newer bathrooms, wood, it's actually vinyl plank flooring that can withstand a lot more, puppy scratches. There's,
It is
it
family friendly.
It is family friendly, exactly.
And that's a good thing.
Yes. It has a gorgeous pool in the backyard,
We
3
saw
bedrooms,
that,
2
yeah.
baths, 1,624 square feet
Nice
on a
size home.
corner cul-de-sac lot
Ooh,
in a gated community.
that sounds like a
yeah,
prime piece of property.
I think so. Yes.
And what's the asking on that?
The listing price is $375,000.
Cool. That's a great price for it. Once again, the address on that place.
That is 10595 North Seacrest Avenue in Fresno, 93730.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center in Fresno, California. As we get started into our last segment, I want to say thanks to Susan McDonald for your kind words, and we'll move forward here. Going to the Science of Mind on page 432, Holmes writes, he says, as God cares for the birds who do not gather in barns, so shall we be cared for if we trust and do not doubt. But we are to seek the kingdom first. Jesus bade us to completely trust in God for everything and in every instance. In other words, we are to depend on principle. You know, how many times have we gotten into something and we figured we've got the answer? Seek ye first the kingdom in all things. You have a bigger God than any obstacle, any situation in your life. Moving forward, he says, Jesus had a complete reliance upon God. Dare we say that such a confidence will be misplaced? Have we ever tried it? Until we have tried it and failed, we are not in a position to contradict this theory. In other words, don't take my word for it, because I can't do it for you anyway. Put it into practice in your life. And it is a practice, and it's a practice that you and you alone can practice for you. It's not difficult, but it does require that we make a choice. We make a choice for ourselves to create a better world environment. Going back to our textbook on page 147, Holmes writes, he says, we set our own limitations. Do we desire to live in a world peopled with friends who love us, surrounded by things beautiful and pleasing? There is but one way, and this way is as certain as the sun shines. It is it, and that's it, right? So he says, daily we must control all thought that denies the real and affirm the divine presence within us. It's up to us to do that, to seek that, to create that within ourselves, and then we watch it unfold. If we do this, we create something called understanding. And, you know, we are encouraged to, as we seek all things, to seek a greater understanding. Understanding embodies not only the intellectual knowledge, but the embodiment of that intellectual knowledge into our life experience. What we understand, what we believe and understand, what we have faith in, believe in, and understand, we will see as life expressing for us. So we can move from where we're at to where we want to be when we can see ourselves being where we want to be. But again, it's all on us. It's our choice, our journey, and we all have our story. You know, we've talked about that, and we all have our in our story we all have our valid reasons why our story is so important, right? You know, you don't understand the importance of my story versus someone else's story. There are people that have been through experiences in life that are far more horrendous than anything that I could even begin to imagine, and they have come out the other side. And they've realized that that was their story at that time, but that's not who they are. You know, it's not our stories. It's the who we are, and we are the divine principle expressing as us. So I get excited when I get into this stuff. I got books all around. I wasn't sure exactly what all I was going to read today. I covered those things. Let's see. There was something here I want to add to this as we move forward. Holmes writes, and then you find this on page 186 in The Science of Mind. He says, look only at what you want. He says, never look at that which you do not wish to experience. Hold on, folks. You know what that is? That's all those daily complaints that we have. Now, you may not think that because you complain, you're looking at them, but that's what you're doing in your mind. You know, our mind, our brain thinks in words and images only. So oftentimes when we're complaining about something, it's not even the words that are going through our mind, but it's the images. And so essentially, with the same thing that we see, the same part of our brain, the visual cortex, that we see the outside world in, as we're complaining, we're seeing that world, only we're seeing it within ourselves. So never look at that which you do not wish to experience. If you catch yourself complaining, stop. Recognize what you've done. Say, wait a second, that's part of my old story. I'm not there anymore. My complaints aren't real. What's real is what is. And what is there is one presence, one power, one good, and that's God. And I am right here, right now, an expression of that. There is, you can go online, look up Complaint Free World. It's a great tool that I believe they come out of Colorado. It's been a long time since I worked with them, but you can purchase these neat little rubberized bracelets. You put them on, and what you got to do is every time you catch yourself complaining, you got to take that off this one and you put it on this one. And when you complain, it goes back and forth. The goal is to go 21 days without having to shift that. And the important thing is to understand that, you know, if you're at day 19 and you're doing really good and you slip up, you still got to shift it, and day 1 starts all over. You want to get to the point to where you can go 21 days without a complaint, and it will change your life, guaranteed. It's an amazing thing. Most people think, oh, you know, it works. We've done it at our center. I've watched people. I watched a woman who was single her whole life changed. She ended up with a husband. She learned how to live a world without complaints. It's an amazing thing, and you can do it too. You don't have to necessarily buy a bracelet or whatever, or the book, and they're out there, and I encourage you to do that if you're interested in doing it. But you can just begin to make it a point for yourself of being aware and seeking to eliminate complaints from your daily life experience, and watch what happens. I want to go further. He says, no matter what the false condition may be, it must be refuted. The proper kind of a denial is based upon the recognition that in reality, there is no limitation. In reality, in truth, in God, in principle, there is no limitation. For mind, as God, can as easily make a planet as an acorn. Now, let's put that in perspective. We're talking about one force, one God, and it's the creator of all that is. But we oftentimes personalize that looking at our life. Okay, this is God's creation. Well, wait a second. There's billions of galaxies with billions of stars and billions of planets. And in the same principle, the same God that created all that created this too. There is no big or little in God or in our expression of God. As we begin to open ourselves up, there is an infiniteness that is available to us at the level that we can open ourselves up to it. We limit ourselves because life, because our experience, because our family, because the society has told us that we're limited. We can throw off those shackles of limitation. We can open our hearts to experience a greater good. There is an abundance of good in the world that is waiting for each and every one of us. And the thing is, as each and every one of us begin to make that shift, more abundance turns up in the world. It's an amazing thing. You know, if you look out in the world today and you see things that worry you, look within and see things that are the solution to the worry. When you look out into the world and you see things that anger you, look within yourself and find the love there that knows no anger. And we can do these things, and you can do these things. Begin to utilize affirmations. Like I say, start your day off, own your day, end your day in gratitude, knowing that what you experienced today was a gift from the divine. There's no other way to put it. If there's only God, and that is my belief, if there's only God, everything I experience today is God expressing, even if it wasn't to my liking. But I can change how I experience things, and I can change the things that I experience. When we begin to do this, don't be surprised if you begin to see a shift in your life experience. You know, maybe people that you used to hang with, be with, experience, you know, socialize with, however you want to phrase that, may fall away. We don't need to try and be missionaries to those people. They can see the good that's going on within ourselves, and they can choose to ask, or they can choose to move on because they're not comfortable in that experience, and that's fine. You know, we are all where we need to be in any given point in time. Whatever our beliefs are, whatever our spiritual understanding is, we never try to, you know, missionary, you know, proselytize or you know, pull someone in that's not ready for the experience. But when they're ready for the experience, if you're ready for the experience, make that choice, make that decision, because no one else can make it for you. No one else can walk that path for you. But you, when you begin to walk that path, you can, and you have something so incredible that walks with you, and it walks with you from within. You know, if you recall that poem Footprints, and you see two pairs of footprints, and then it's one pair, and the poem goes something to the effect that, you know, what happened to you, God? Well, the thing is, in truth, there really is only one set of footprints. You know, we try to separate ourselves because life tells us that, society tells us that, but it's always and only God, divine principle, Goddess, however your heart relates to it. You are an expression of that. There is only one life. That life is God. That life is your life now, which means that no matter what obstacles you are expressing, a greater good is available to you right now. Now, maybe it won't unfold right now because your belief system has to evolve. That's fine. Maybe it'll unfold instantly because your belief system can grasp that to each of us as each of us believe. There are certain things that we have to recognize. We recognize the wholeness, the oneness of all of humanity, the collected expression of God as individual beings, and be in acceptance of that. You know, accept people for who they are. If someone is in a state of discord, and where maybe the old you would be irritated and, you know, maybe want to become aggressive or, you know, have complaining thoughts or whatever, let it go. That's their stuff. They'll get to their point at some point in time. Just accept them for being God expressing as them, and maybe they have some issues. But, you know, it's not conflict, it's not aggression that's going to resolve their issues. What will resolve their issues is the choices that they make within themselves to express a greater life, a greater good. And we can come to that also. And as we do, like I said, we create a greater life. I taught, you know, one of our shows, it's been a while back, on the concept of what they call the butterfly effect. Now, this was actually presented to a scientific community, and I think it was in the 70s. I don't remember exactly when, but the individual that discovered it was basically laughed off stage. It took time for that seed that was planted to germinate and take hold. Science does not look at the butterfly effect today and laugh, because people have taken the time to do some research to see how that really does express itself. And they realize that there is such a thing as the butterfly effect. And what that is one small action. One small action can have an effect on a global scale. Today, can you be that small action? Can you, within your life, be that small action to create a better life for yourself, to be a loving presence in the world, to know a greater good, and to allow it to express through you? Can you? Truth is, you can. And it's done unto us as we believe. And that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about. I hope it was enlightening to you. I hope it gave you something to think about. But as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, the presence of God watches over you. Truly, wherever you are, God is there. All is well. Have a great week, my friends. I will see you next week when we come back. Blessings.
CentralValleyTalk.com